Woken Jacob's Quest, and tonight I just got back from watching The Strangers Chapter 1, which, if you've seen the trailer for this movie, you might go in it thinking that this is a prequel. They called it Chapter 1. The trailer explicitly says, see how the strangers became the strangers. Seems, pretty direct. In fact, it's being marketed at the same time as we have A Quiet Place Day 1, which maybe that's just, some accidental cross-promotion thing happening because we got Chapter 1, we got Day 1. We're thinking, okay, this is a prequel like so many things have been doing. This is not a prequel. This is not a prequel. In fact, and this might be a little bit of a spoiler about how I feel about this movie, I did not realize that this was not a prequel until on my way home, and I was like, wait a minute, this wasn't before all that other stuff. So let's talk about The Strangers for a second. So the first one came out in 2008, and it was kind of a surprise hit. It instantly gained like this cult following, and it really kind of pioneered the, I don't know what you would call it, I guess background kind of creepiness of some slashers, where like, audiences, the camera would not make it obvious that a character is in the background watching our protagonist. And it's only when audiences sit there for a second and they see someone moving in the background, they're like, oh my god, the killer's been there the whole time. And that kind of became its thing. That was like the big deal about this movie. But also, the other big thing, and I personally was disappointed by this when I first saw this movie. I think it was like in high school at some point. We never learn any motivations or characters about like who these killers are, why they're doing what they're doing. They always, what was the original tagline? It was just like because you were home or something like that. And that's generally all we get. And that's kind of this franchise. I guess it's a franchise now. We're on number 3. That's kind of this franchise's shtick, right? Like, we don't know the motivations or identities of any of these people. And, the idea being it could happen to anyone, anywhere, at any time. And maybe that's the thing that's supposed to be scary. And I suppose that could work for the first movie. And, I'll admit, I was really annoyed when the movie ended and I first saw it. I was like, oh, so we just learned nothing. There's just nothing then. But, okay, fine. That's supposed to be the scary part. Alright, whatever. So here we are. What I thought was a prequel, the whole movie, watching it, which I probably should have realized it can't be a prequel because they explicitly use smartphones and voice chat, and they mention Airbnbs, which I don't think existed in 2008, maybe not. So I probably should have picked up on like, wait, no, this can't be a prequel. They have all this technology. Anyways, we still are just in this place of like, I have to talk about spoilers with this movie, because here's the thing, and I'm just gonna, before I get into spoilers, I'll say this one thing, and then you can shut it off here, and then I'll go into some spoilers, because this is pretty much gonna sum up my feelings of this. If you have seen the original Strangers movie, the 2008 original movie, if you've seen that, then you have already seen this movie. In fact, you've seen a better version in every way of this movie, beat for beat. And that's it. Like, end of sentence, I guess, because there's nothing really more to add past that without going into spoilers. Whatever spoilers even mean for a movie like this. So there you go. That's my review of that. I'm very frustrated with this movie, and the dialogue between the couple here, it is so just cardboard, stilted, just like wooden performances. They're trying to have like these cute romantic moments, and it seems really awkward. And I don't know what it is with the guy. He like stares into the camera and he kind of does a creepy face sometimes, but I'm like, is he trying to do this on purpose, or is he just being weird? Are the filmmakers trying to like make us think that he's in on this? It's very confusing what they were going for with his performance sometimes. There's just a lot of very strange, odd decisions, but on top of that, the scares are generic. There's nothing new added here. Every single thing that you saw in that original movie was done better than what's done here, and they try to like do similar things. We're like, oh, the protagonist didn't notice that someone walked right past them, and oh, someone's watching them and only the camera's picking it up. But like, they're not subtle about it at all. Nothing that made that original movie unique at all is like happening here. So I don't know. And on top of that, some of the stupid decisions, which again, I have to get into spoilers in order to talk about, but like, I have not seen movie protagonist stupid decisions like this in a while. It feels like this is very like stereotype, like, oh my god, did you really just go that direction? Yeah, you did. Look, there's a Geico commercial that they made a couple years back where like they're kind of making fun of how horror movie protagonists are really stupid. I'm sure you might remember the Geico commercial I'm talking about, but my point is, the people in this movie act like that parody commercial at certain points, and we're just gonna go ahead and get into that. So there you go, that's the spoiler-free review. We're gonna get into it. Here we go. Okay, spoilers. Oh man. Okay, so the first things first. The whole movie, I am waiting for them to do anything that was not done in that original movie. And I'm like, okay, so couple is on a honeymoon / anniversary, whatever. They're staying at this isolated place in the woods, and someone knocks on their door and they ask them if so-and-so's home, and they're not. And then slowly they get stalked and they get attacked and they have to run through the woods and they try to escape, but they don't make it. And then they get tied to chairs and then they get stabbed, and then, you know, their fate is left unknown, except there's like a slight difference. But other than that, it's like beat for beat the same movie. Like it's just the first movie again, but it's done worse, like in every way. The scares are not as good. Nothing is as clever. The dialogue is worse. The protagonists are not as likable. Like, everything about it is just a worse version. And I'm like, okay, very weird. And I keep on waiting for the movie to do something to like, why'd you make this? Like, if it's not a reboot, but apparently it's also not a prequel, why'd you make, what are you doing? You know, like, are you gonna show us? I thought maybe at like the final confrontation they'd have like the strangers finally say why they're doing this, or what they want, or who they are. Like, give me something new that's not literally the exact same movie but again, you know. And then they just don't do it. Instead, here's what they decide to do. So the movie ends exactly like how the first one did. Both of them have been stabbed, and it's, you know, it's kind of unclear who's alive at first, if any of them. And then we cut to our main protagonist, the lady. She's alive in the hospital. We have to assume that her boyfriend has died, right? And she kind of wakes up in the hospital, and just to, I guess, show that she's alive. And then it cuts to be continued. And I was like baffled by this, because I was like, wait a minute, I thought this was a prequel the whole time. You know, so like my brain is kind of like, wait, to be continued. They were setting something up? Because that's the other thing. I realize it's called Chapter 1, so you would think, oh, so there's going to be a Chapter 2, but I thought they meant Chapter 1 as in it's a prequel, because that's what the marketing implied. But also the movie does not set up in any way that there's anything this character can do moving forward, because like I said, it ends in the same way that the first movie does. You know, it's not as if she's been taken captive by the killers, or the police have one of the killers in under arrest and they're gonna get some information. Nothing like that is happening. The killers get away, she's stabbed, her boyfriend's dead. That's generally where these movies end. So I don't know what the to be continued is. There's no cliffhanger. There's no, like, you know what I mean? It's not one of those situations where you're like, oh, but what happens next? They're in this situation. How do they get out of it? It's like, no, she got out of it. It's over. So that happens. And then the credits are rolling. And so I'm sitting here puzzling, and I'm like, okay, so they're making more of the prequel, because again, at this point I still think it's a prequel. And then there's a mid-credit scene. And the mid-credit scene just asks more questions. It adds more questions to this, because we're back in the hospital, and again, she's just kind of moving and she's waking up, and it's, you know, she's alone, it's dark, she's in this hospital room, she sits up out of her bed, and it's revealed that one of the killers is laying in the bed right next to her, and she doesn't notice the killer, she doesn't scream or anything, and you would think, oh, maybe this is like she's gonna wake up from a nightmare and it's gonna be like, ah, and then there's no one there and she has like PTSD or something. But they don't do that. She sits up in the bed, they reveal that the killer is laying next to her, and then they cut back to the credits, and then that's it. That's what we get. So is the implication that she is going to immediately get killed, or that the killers for some reason followed her into the hospital? And I don't know. I don't understand what they're doing with this. You know, is part 2 gonna start with the nightmare thing where like the character wakes up screaming and then there's no one there? Because if you're gonna start that movie that way, then why'd you you know, like, I'm just puzzled by the decision to have this mid-credit scene that added nothing and made the whole chapter 2 thing even more confusing. Because I'm like, so she's dead, or this is a nightmare, but for some reason you didn't go through with the whole, you know, character who wakes up screaming because it was actually just a nightmare the whole time kind of thing. So I am just baffled by this movie. It feels like originally, at some point in production, this was just going to be a remake. It feels like that's what this was going to be. And then maybe very, very late in production, like they were done filming and they had to add on a scene or something, they're like, actually, instead of this being a remake, we're going to say that this is a sequel, and we're also going to start making more sequels, and we're going to start filming right now, because on top of everything I just told you, guess what? Part 2 and 3 were filmed simultaneously. They started like just making the other ones already, and granted, they're probably really cheap to make, but my lord, the confidence. So part 2 is apparently gonna release this year also, at some point later in the year, I imagine closer to Halloween. And then part 3 will probably release next year, probably around this beginning of summer, same time. And now we'll have a trilogy of movies that they just started making without... I don't know what's happening here. I don't get this. It was marketed as if it's a prequel, but it turns out to be a sequel. But they also still basically treat it like a remake, because it is beat for beat doing almost exactly what the first movie did, except you have this very confusing mid-credit scene for a part 2 that's going to be released this year. And I'm like, this movie didn't add anything new. It didn't end on a cliffhanger. I'm more curious about the production of this than I am about any kind of story elements, because there are no story elements. I don't know who these killers are, or why they're doing what they're doing, or how our hero would like figure out any of this information and what, hunt them down? Is that what the second one's going to be about? Is it going to be like a revenge story? I don't know. These characters were not memorable enough to warrant 2 more sequels. You know, we didn't learn anything about the killers to make them interesting as actual characters, because they're just nameless, faceless killers. And granted, that was the original point, was that they could be anyone and it could happen anywhere. But at this point, when you're genuinely trying to make a franchise, you got to give us a name. You got to give us like a backstory. You got to, like, you know what I mean? Like, you got to develop something here. And they just didn't do any of that. And so I don't know why you made this movie. Who's this for? Everyone in my audience was laughing at times when I'm pretty sure they did not intend people to be laughing. Some ridiculous stuff happens. There's a so there's a moment when the girlfriend ran off into the woods. She's hiding, she's running, she's hiding. It's dark. There's 3 killers on the loose. They were about to escape on this vehicle, and they get rammed, and the vehicle gets crushed. And so, crap, we can't use it. But the truck that the killers used to ram their vehicle, it is left running, and the killer has disappeared. And it's supposed to be like a spooky moment, but our hero has a shotgun, so he shoots at the killers, and the killer runs away. And their running vehicle, the truck that they used to ram them with, is still running. It's still functioning. It's right there. In fact, the door is even open. But does our hero get in the truck that is running? No. Our hero, who by the way has the only now functioning vehicle, it's not like they could have, it's not like the killers have another vehicle to ram this truck with. They could only do that once. There's only one vehicle now. So there's no reason for him to not get in this truck right now and try to go get help. He just doesn't do it. Instead, he runs off into the woods after his girlfriend, who, by the way, moments earlier, she had a really good hiding place. And she tries to call 911 for help. She does manage to successfully call them, and they're on their way. And for some unknown reason, instead of staying in this hiding place where the killers could not see her, like they established, like the killer's looking like almost right at her, but can't see her because she's under all these leaves, for some reason she decides to leave that hiding place and start running through the woods, you know, with all the crunchy leaves and the sticks really loudly. And of course she immediately gets captured. So just the decision making here, and then our man, our hero, who did not get in the running truck with the door open, the only working vehicle that was right there, like he literally was like leaning up against it and he didn't get inside. The guy who didn't do that and instead ran into the woods, he manages, by like just pure luck, by the way, he wasn't hunting down the killers, he just happened upon one. He manages to get one at gunpoint with a shotgun. And so first he's asking like, where's my girlfriend? Where is she? Where's she at? And of course the killer's just being crazy and dancing and laughing, right? And then he's like, give me one reason why I shouldn't kill you. Give me one reason. And he's like just talking and just talking. And everyone in the theater with me is like, just do it. She's clearly crazy and she's not going to tell you anything. Just pull the trigger. And of course, he tries to give some like speech of like, oh, you're my second kill of the night, right? Because we'll get into that. And before he can do it, of course, one of the other killers shows up and hits him on the head. So he never gets to pull the trigger. So not only did you not get in the vehicle and you ran into the woods for no reason, but now when you had the chance to take out one of the killers, you just waited and you got taken from behind, and now you're captured. And everyone in my audience, just you could hear like the collective sigh and just like, ugh, like what is happening? These are just, it's just bad decision after bad decision. And it's not that they're like hateable characters, you just hate what they're doing, you know? You're like, my god, man. So let's talk about the thing he did earlier, because this is also just another ridiculous moment. They had called someone because the fridge in the Airbnb was not working. And so of course, you're like, okay, well that's gonna come back later. So of course, in the middle of like running away from killers, and they just got their hands on a shotgun, someone's on the front porch, and so they turn the corner and they shoot, and of course it's just the guy who's there to fix the fridge, right? Which, by the way, it's like 1 or 2 in the morning and he's here to fix the fridge. Like, it's been nighttime for many hours at this point. There's no way this guy's actually showing up at this time of night to fix the fridge, by the way. Anyways, he's there, and so he gets shot, and they like have this breakdown on the front porch of the house, the one where the lights are on and it's brightly lit and everyone who might be trying to kill you can easily see you. They like have this breakdown moment where they sit and they cry and they're like, no, we just killed an innocent man, and they even put down the shotgun for a second and they just kind of like, oh god, no. And they just like have this whole moment when it's like, guys, I understand what just happened, but like, you are not running or hiding, you have a shotgun now, like. And granted, they do try to get the guy's keys and get in a vehicle, and that's what starts the whole truck thing, but Man, it's just ridiculous decision after another, you know, like there was no brain cells here between these protagonists. And reminder, at least the woman, the guy supposedly, I guess we have to assume is dead, she's supposed to be the protagonist for the next 2 movies. She was not making any smarter decisions than the guy was. You know what I mean? Like, neither of these were like the heroes who are going to be able to like hunt down these killers or something. So like, I don't know what the story is. I don't know what you're going to do with this protagonist, because there's no story here. I don't know. I really, unless the entire second movie is spent with her like doing like crazy field training and like she becomes like a master assassin, unless you spend the whole movie trying to like build her up in that way, I don't see what you're gonna do here. Because these were like very stereotypical dumb decision making horror movie protagonists that frankly, like, we left that era a long time ago. So, ooh, man. Anyways, that's The Strangers Chapter 1. Advertised as a prequel. Surprise, it's actually a sequel. And not only that, but they filmed 2 sequels to this one simultaneously. So this is the beginning of a trilogy, actually. And also, this movie that you start off the trilogy with, it's just the first movie, but worse. It's every scare, every plot beat, it's like not as good as the first movie. There's nothing new learned here. There's no like lore granted to the franchise. We don't know who the killers are or why they're doing what they're doing. They just give the same answers and they do the same things. They tie them to the chair, just like the first movie. And you're like, why'd you make this? If you have some story for the second movie, you probably should have just started with that movie. If you have anything at all new to add to this, why do this one? Just do the other one where you have something different, something new happen. You know, tell us, even if it's dumb, even if we don't like the answer, tell us who these people are and why they're doing this and how this started. Something, because anything would have been a more interesting movie than this. Because this was just, it was just bland and predictable and boring. The only surprise, the only like genuine like what, was when it said to be continued, and then I realized later like, oh, this was not a prequel. So like that, those are the only times I felt anything about this movie. Not a good sign. Anyways, let me know what you guys think about The Strangers Chapter 1, and let me know if you'll see, I guess, the sequel that's coming out sometime this year. Surprise! Alright, I'll see you guys later. Bye.